good evening and welcome to C-SPAN's coverage of the first presidential debate of the 2024 election. A view from tonight in Atlanta, in the spin room, where supporters of the candidates are already gathering to talk to the media. In an hour, President Biden and former President Trump will face off in a debate for the first time since the 2020 election. Tonight's debate, hosted by CNN and simulcasted here on the C-SPAN networks. Before the debate begins tonight, we want to start the conversation, as we always do on C-SPAN, with all of you, the voters. If you're supporting President Biden and you already know you'll be voting for him, dial in tonight at 202-748-8920. If you support the former president, dial in at 202-748-8921. If you are undecided about who you will vote for this November, call in at 202-748-8922. And if you've decided to vote for a third-party candidate, call us at 202-748-8923. Our question for you before the debate: what do you want to hear in this first presidential debate? That is our question. You can join us on X as well with the handle @CSPAN, or on Facebook.com/CSPAN. And you can also send a text and answer that question at 202-748-8903. We will also hear from you after tonight's debate. We'll take your phone calls and your texts. And if you follow us on X @CSPAN, you can participate in our poll this evening. We want to know in that poll who you think won tonight's debate, and we'll show you those results later on. Joining us from inside the spin room tonight is Naomi Lim. She's the White House reporter with the Washington Examiner. Naomi Lim, according to the Hollywood Reporter, CNN told that outlet there are over 800 journalists from around the world on site in Atlanta to cover this first presidential debate. Describe the scene where you're at in the spin room, in the Atlanta studio, and around the city.
There's an amazing sense of anticipation here. I think reporters are sort of feeling the weight of this moment, because this is sort of an unprecedented event in terms of the debate. It's against these two candidates that, although the public knows very well, hasn't seen them, as you were sort of describing, side by side since 2020. And I think that we're sort of waiting to figure out, what will happen. We've been talking about it for so long. It's a little bit different, though, in previous years. In previous years, we can go to these debates and we can sort of pull aside voters as they wait to go in and sort of get, their gut check about how they're feeling about the elections, about the different campaigns, the different candidates, the different issues. But this debate is different in the past. It's, again, like as you mentioned, hosted by CNN, the first time that that's happened in almost 40 years. And there's no sort of in-person audience. It'll just be the two moderators, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, and not even any campaign staff are allowed to sort of intercede, even with their two commercial breaks. So there's a sense of sort of heightened anticipation, expectations. There are sort of protests whittled around, but there's also the sort of security zone is so large here that it's not something that the candidates will particularly interact with unless they're on their way on their motorcade into the venue.
What is security like around the Atlanta studio, at CNN studio there?
It's been really locked down. Sort of getting Ubers and places, there's a little bit of sort of annoyant, irritated about that, because at the same time there's also other sporting events. And so speaking to sort of voters in the lead up to tonight, I sort of said, what were their sort of feelings about the debate? Because usually having an event like this in a battleground state such as Georgia, it can be seen as a boon for the local economy. That'll be different this time because, again, we don't have that audience. But as you sort of mentioned, there are hundreds of journalists from all around the world that have come in here to cover this event and hopefully shine a spotlight not only on this state, but the issues that the public have at large.
You're in the spin room. What is this room and what happens there?
So this is a basically a basketball stadium at the Georgia Institute of Technology, and it's been transformed. You have sort of sets like yours along either side, and then sort of on the court where, you know, players would usually eke out points, you're sort of seeing the campaigns bring out some of their surrogates, at least to do pre-spin about what, you know, their expectations are for the debate, what they're hoping to get out of it, and we're sort of seeing that play out, and then also sort of, you know, local journalists also doing hits and things like that to you know, try and convey what's happening here to the audiences like yours.
What surrogates are we expecting to see in the spin room tonight after the debate? C-SPAN is going to be live to hear from many of the candidates' supporters, but who are some names that we can expect to see?
So it's going to be interesting in terms of years gone past, because in previous years it's been a little bit more freewheeling, where, you know, there will be campaign surrogates or supporters standing behind, sort of in front of people with sort of signs. And we learnt this afternoon that the Biden campaign is sort of throwing out that playbook. Instead, they're going to bring out people like Governor Gavin Newsom from California, people like Senator Raphael Warnock from Georgia, and they're going to, and also the former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and they're sort of going to do a very formal, almost press conference where each of those surrogates will sort of give a statement and take a few questions, but then leave the spin room. And that's something that we haven't seen in the past, that is at the same time sort of very in line with the Biden campaign. They tend to be very disciplined, and it's a way for them to sort of control what happens, depending if it's a good night or a bad night for Biden. On the Trump side, they're being a little bit tight-lipped about it. We've seen sort of Representative Byron Donalds from Florida sort of take questions. We've also seen Corey Lewandowski, who was the 2016 campaign manager, doing his rounds. So we're seeing those sort of faces, but it will be a different operation from years gone past. And again, maybe that will change if the Biden campaign have a good night, but I think they're sort of very much sort of setting expectations. I thought it was interesting too, in some of their pre-spin, they were sort of saying that, you know, they're not anticipating a polling bump per se. This is just their chance to make sure that the president can lay out this contrast between these two candidates that, you know, we haven't seen side by side in so many years.
Anything else that the two camps have told you about their strategy tonight and their preparations for the debate?
So the preparations have been very different from the two candidates, just as like their policies are different, their strategies in terms of preparation. You have Biden, who has taken a very traditional approach. He sort of ensconced himself in Camp David for the past week, sitting down with former White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain, you know, sort of nutting out his policy positions before then sort of doing 90-minute mock debates. On the other hand, you have Trump, who, and maybe this is an expectation-setting game, but what they've been telling the public is that they've had advisors, people like Jason Miller, who's his comms director or comms advisor, as well as you know, policy advisors like Stephen Miller, who was very integral to his immigration policy, as well as these candidates that are popping up for potential the vice presidential nomination, just sort of advising him and doing these informal policy discussions. And so that's how they're prepared. In terms of strategy, it's going to be interesting. We're hearing that Trump is going to be talking about crime, economy, and immigration, whereas the Biden camp will be talking about sort of abortion, you know, the importance of democracy, talking about the 2020 election interference, as well as the January 6th Capitol riot, as well as sort of this idea that Trump is helping big business and you know, wealthy people, not the middle class. So they're the two sort of talking points that we'll expect to hear. Biden has been a little bit more forthcoming in terms of his strategy. One thing that his campaign has said that is he's going to maybe sort of try to appear above the frame and speak to the camera. It's like I'm speaking to you, trying to sort of skirt around Trump and skirt around the moderators to get his message directly out to the people. So that's what we're sort of seeing pre-debate. Post-debate, they have stops in Virginia on the Trump side and stops in North Carolina on the Biden side, and then sort of fundraising off of that as well.
Naomi Lim covers the White House for the Washington Examiner. Thank you for your time. As we heard from Naomi, the topics that are likely to be addressed this evening by the two candidates, and that's what we want to hear from you. ahead of tonight's debate at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. What issues do you want them to address? We're going to get to your thoughts here in just a minute. But first, as Naomi was talking about, she's in the spin room, which is where the surrogates go before, in this case, and after, to talk about how they expect their candidates to do and how they did, and talk about how they did in the actual debate. Let's take a spin around the spin room.
Is there a break? Is he right out of the break? He's like, I don't want to go.
Again, C-SPAN's camera is live inside the spin room in Atlanta, just ahead of tonight's CNN presidential debate. We, along with many other networks, simulcasting the debate here on our C-SPAN networks. Ahead of the two candidates squaring off in this first presidential debate, we want to hear from all of you this evening. Tonight's debate is different from previous debates in many ways. As many of you've heard, it's the first time a sitting president squares off against a former president, and the first time in 37 years the Commission on Presidential Debates hasn't hosted a general election matchup. The rules are different as well. This is what you can expect: a 90-minute debate tonight. The microphones will be muted when one candidate is talking and addressing the question or responding to a question. No props or pre-written notes are allowed, but they will be provided a pen, a pad of paper, and a bottle of water. There will be 2 commercial breaks, about 3.5 minutes long. No campaign staff can interact during those breaks. And CNN is also not allowing the other networks to provide analysis or have their anchors fill the breaks. They can fill the breaks with ads. No opening statements from the candidates. They will have a uniform podiums. In other words, they'll look the same. And the positions have been determined by a coin flip. President Biden on the right, former President Trump will be on the left of your screen. And as you've heard, no studio audience. A little more about tonight's debate from CNN's Phil Mattingly. Last night on the network, he did a walkthrough of the debate hall, the debate studio. Take a look.
President Biden will enter from the right side of your screen. President Trump will enter from the left side of your screen. The podiums are 8 feet apart. Directly across from them, the moderators, CNN's Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. Now, a reminder, this is a television studio. There's no audience. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions and 1 minute for responses and rebuttals. At the moderator's discretion, there may be an additional minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. So how does a candidate know how much time is left to speak? Attached to the cameras in the studio and in the candidate's field of view are the timing lights. When the lights show yellow, there are 15 seconds left in a candidate's answer or response. When the lights flash red, there are 5 seconds left. And when the display is solid red, the time is up. At that point, the candidate's microphone will be turned off, and the other candidate will have their microphone turned on. My colleague, Victor Blackwell, has more on that.
Thank you, Phil. If we go behind the podiums, you can see 2 green lights. When they're on, they signal to the candidate his microphone is on. When the green lights are off, they signal to the candidate his microphone is off. Now I want to give you a sense of what it will look like for viewers at home if a candidate whose microphone is off interrupts a candidate whose microphone is on. So I'm standing at one podium, and I'll ask Phil to come in and take the other podium. And so let's say I'm answering a question. My light is green, and I'm speaking. Phil's microphone is off, and his green lights are not illuminated. He's going to interrupt me as I'm speaking, and this is what it will sound like. My volume remains constant, while Phil's interruption can be difficult to understand.
Now, let's try the opposite. My microphone is now on. Victor's microphone is off, and he's going to interrupt me. My volume remains constant, while Victor's interruption can be difficult to understand. Now, CNN's production team has shared this demonstration with the campaigns earlier today, and we're sharing it with you, our viewers, so everyone fully understands how tomorrow night will work. Now, we should note, by agreeing to participate in this debate, both campaigns and candidates have also agreed to abide by these rules.
From CNN, a preview of how tonight's debate will work. We are simulcasting CNN's presidential debate here on the C-SPAN networks, and ahead of the two candidates squaring off, we want to hear from all of you. What do you want to hear from these two candidates? There are the lines on your screen. We'll hear from DeAndre first in Baltimore. You are undecided, DeAndre. Tell us why.
Good evening. Thank you for taking my call. The reason I'm undecided is because both candidates are too pro-Israel, and I feel like, we need to focus on America and Americans, secure our southern border, and, let Israel fight their own wars.
All right, so foreign policy, you want to hear them talk about that issue tonight?
Correct. Let's actually, bring to the table in the talking front about, making AIPAC an actual, register as a foreign entity. I feel like that's very important for our nation going forward.
DeAndre in Baltimore, undecided. Adrian in Cary, North Carolina, supporting President Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you want to hear from him and the former president? What issue do you want them to debate?
I would love for them to talk about how they're going to support educators in the United States. As a science educator myself, I want them to talk about what this means for education of our children. Also, as a woman, a mother, and a grandmother, I want to know how they're going to take care of our children. And finally, as a human, taking care of the middle class. This has not happened. A strong middle class represents a strong United States, and so far it looks like we've been losing that since the 80s. We feel like it's taxation without representation, and that holds true for anyone who's not the top 10%.
Adrian, how do you take care of the middle class?
Take care of them by not taxing them to death, and what's happening right now is it seems like these billionaires and millionaires are getting away with kinds of tax loops, whatever they want to do, and it's legal to them, so they just go ahead and do it. They're stealing from the lower classes, and it's just all to benefit the rich, and we see that happening with the index of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer.
All right, Adrian. Kayla in Waterloo, Iowa, supporting the former president. Kayla, we're listening to you.
Okay, I'd like to limit the people coming into our country and checking to see if they're terrorists, if they've been let out of prisons in their own countries, and then let them in legally. Also, I would like to see a reform made on our health insurance for all. Obamacare, we are just now reaping the repercussions from that, and that has just devastated the senior populations. And also the economy. Let's get that back up to speed here.
And how do you do that, Kayla? What do you need to see for you to feel that the economy is better?
I need to see our prices come down, our middle class going back to work in jobs that they can make a living at, make their rent, make their insurance payments, whatever they need to have, they will be able to make. They're not making it now.
What's not affordable? Tell me some items that are not affordable in your opinion.
Food, gas, clothing, Everything that I can think of off the top of my head is too expensive. All the prices have gone up, and it might be price gouging in some instances, and maybe we need to look into that.
And Kayla, why do you think the former president would do better on the economy than President Biden?
Oh, well, first of all, he has a business attitude. He's been in business for many years.
Okay.
He knows how that works. And he also knows how to talk to people.
All right, Kayla, I'm gonna leave it at there because I want to go back inside the spin room. Vivek Ramaswamy, who was a former presidential contender himself this time around and possible contender for a running mate for the former president, is talking to the media.
Operating in an environment of regulatory ambiguity, and I think regulatory ambiguity is ultimately a precondition for government overreach, is that when the government doesn't predefine what its rules is, it gets to define what they are after the fact. And so whatever the rules are, we got to define them clearly. That's my position.
Would you say that you can rely on a digital fiat instead, and that's why they're not doing something about it?
Well, I think that it's not the sole reason, but I think that's a big part of why. I think Janet Yellen and others have expressed support for central bank digital currency, which I am dead set opposed to, and I am grateful and happy that Donald Trump, a number of months ago, after some conversations that we had, as he said on stage, came out with firm opposition to a central bank digital currency in the United States of America. And I think that that's good because I think it embodies who he is and why he entered government in the first place. That's part of what Draining the Swamp is all about, is providing clarity on what the rules are or aren't, staying within the confines of what the Constitution says, not seizing power that the federal government should not have had in the first place. I think that's part of what a CBDC represents. And so is that one reason why President Biden's operating in the realm of ambiguity? Sure. It's not even President Biden, really. It's a question who his handlers are who are controlling him. But I do think that that's one of the reasons why they prefer that regime. But it's one among many. It's antithetical to what the modern Democratic Party is.
One of the attacks against Trump, it's very common, is that he
would
uphold my home podcast.
Your podcast, good for you.
That he wouldn't uphold the Constitution. What's your response to people?
Say that again?
One of the attacks against Trump is commonly he wouldn't uphold the Constitution. What's your response to that?
My response to that is that's a lot of projection from the people who are making the accusations.
Does
the reality is
call for the termination of the Constitution?
He did not call for the termination
of the Constitution. A massive fraud of this type actually allows the termination.
He did not call. He did not call. Cite for me one time where Donald Trump called for the termination of the Constitution.
I'm reading it to you right now.
He's never called for the termination of the Constitution.
Massive fraud of this type
but here's what I believe. I'm going to answer this question before I go to the next interview. Well, what I do believe is there's the projection of
Vivek Ramaswamy in the spin room in Atlanta. Our cameras are inside. They're live this evening ahead of tonight's CNN presidential debate, which we will simulcast here on the C-SPAN networks. We're getting your thoughts ahead of the debate on what topics you want addressed by these two candidates. Yvonne in Mountain Home, good evening to you. You're supporting President Biden, is that right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, what topics do you want addressed?
I want decency back in America. I'm tired of all the lies. I'm tired of hearing people uplift Donald Trump as though he is a god. He is not. He is not a conservative. He is radical, and he has co-opted Christianity. I am a Christian, and I love my country, but I don't feel safe with other Christians right now who believe that Donald Trump is the second coming of Jesus Christ. I also am an educator, and I'm tired of people dumbing down education. I want President Biden to be able to work through some of the issues that we've seen happen in the last 8 years and bring education back up, stop burning books, stop banning books, and educate people, really educate people. And I think that with the decency that Biden brings to the table, that we can come back together at some point and the scales will fall off the eyes of people who have been deceived by Donald Trump.
All right, Yvonne. Colin, Staten Island, New York. Undecided, Colin. Why are you undecided? Colin in Staten Island, you with us? Undecided call.
Hi, yes, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm leaning towards Biden, but it's mostly because I'm cringing away from Trump. He's got too much baggage, just way too much baggage. And I think tonight what I'm looking for is for Biden to show that he does have some vigor. I feel like it's unfair, the clips that are snipped for him, but seriously, he's going across over to the G7. He's out there for the June War Memorial holiday, and it's just he's showing something that I don't think that the rest of the country really sees often.
So you want to see vitality from the president, mental acuity. Is that what you're looking for to seal the deal?
Well, I think he has it. I just don't think he's showing it, or it's not being shown. And I think this is a big audience for him tonight, and I think it's an opportunity. Listen, I'd rather have another choice there. I really would rather have another choice. But if it is so binary where it's one or the other, I think that Trump just doesn't have so many things, including character. I mean, there's so much. It would be a lot to get into. But.
All right. Well, there will be two candidates on the stage tonight. The candidates must meet requirements outlined in Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution. A natural-born citizen, 35 years of age, and have lived in the United States for 14 years. CNN has additional qualifications. There must be a formal statement of candidacy filed with the FEC and be on enough ballots to have a pathway to 270 electoral votes. They must also have reached at least 15% in 4 separate national polls. That means, as many of you know, Robert Kennedy Jr. will not be on the debate stage tonight. The Kennedy campaign hasn't given many details on how his solo debate will unfold, but he will be having what he's calling his own real debate streaming on X. This is from CBS's reporting. It will have a live audience. The Kennedy event will take place at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, the same time as this CNN presidential debate. He plans to respond to the questions given to the candidates in his debate. We'll show you a little bit of that after tonight's CNN presidential debate. Several of you have also talked about the economy this evening. It's one of the issues that you want addressed by these two candidates. It was an issue back in 2020 as well. We want to show you what the two candidates had to say back then in 2020 when they squared off in the first presidential debate of that election year.
My economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth because it would be about buying American. By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it before when you were vice president with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done. And you know what happened?
Yeah, you got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is
Mr. President, Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for American people.
But let me.
Excuse me.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery since economic recovery since 1929. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't booming.
He blew it.
It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since 1929.
Is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse me,
one.
Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you were number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. Part of my standard fare.
I'm the guy that
he
brought
totally
back
gave
the
up on
automobile
manufacturing.
industry.
All right, let him
We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year.
From the first presidential debate of the 2020 election cycle, then Vice President Joe Biden squaring off against then the sitting president, President Trump. You can watch previous debates if you go to our website, cspan.org. We also have previous vice presidential debates. We are 30 minutes away from the CNN presidential debate, the first one of this 2024 election cycle, being held before these two candidates have been officially nominated by their parties. They are the presumptive nominees tonight. CNN reporting that they are going through final prep right now before the 9 p.m. Eastern start. We're asking all of you what you want to hear from them tonight. Ivy in Washington, supporting the former president. It's your turn.
Hi, good evening, and thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Well, I think that having served in immigration, amnesty, refugee resettlement, and migration for 20 years, I think that my primary issue is immigration. I think there should be an elimination of birthright citizenship. I think that non-citizens should not be rewarded with entitlements that are bestowed and should be limited to current citizens. I also believe that in most cases, we need to address the U.S. agriculture, specifically black farmers who have been awarded money in settlements from the USDA with direct racism, but have not paid out those awards as of yet.
All right, Ivy, a little bit difficult to understand you because of an echo there, but I think we heard the gist of it on immigration. Kevin in Fort Wayne, Indiana, undecided. What?
Yeah.
So, what are you waiting for to decide?
Greta, I'm waiting to see if I can stop being, as I describe it, a political atheist.
What does that mean?
Trump, well, I'll explain it in these terms.
Okay.
Mr. Trump has shown a total lack of respect for our institutions of government that extends across the spectrum from the Justice Department through the legislative branch to obviously the executive branch.
Okay, so a lack of respect. Can you tell us what you want from President Biden?
I'd like President Biden to point that out significantly to the American people as a matter of explaining to the American people, as he's attempted recently, why Mr. Trump is terribly unfit to ever be president again of the United States.
All right, Kevin, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to go inside the spin room. California Governor Gavin Newsom is talking to the media, supporter of President Biden.
He was talking about sinking electric boats. The teleprompter went out and he panicked. There's some legitimate questions there as well.
How have you counseled the president as he prepared for this debate?
How do you counsel someone who has more debate experience than any modern American president? He's been at this more than anybody. In fact, what I wanted to do when I saw him is, can you counsel me on how to relax tonight? Because as someone that's not up there, I probably have more anxiety than he does. He delivers each and every time. He meets these moments. You've seen it. I haven't seen an exception. Look back. He meets these moments. He delivers. have all the honestly, all the confidence in the world he'll do that again tonight. The only thing that's interesting is how this mic issue will play out.
Tell us more about that.
Just interesting.
Well, what do you mean by interesting? The mute button's new. How significant is that? We've never had that before.
So it's just interesting, right? All of us are interested in it. What does that mean? I mean, here's a guy who talks over, tries to bully everybody. It's all about intimidation. It's all about, trying to get someone off their script of sorts or of their game. It plays very differently. If he's sitting there mouthing off and you have a split screen and people are like, why is he talking and I can't hear him? And he looks a little more unhinged because he is reasonably already unhinged. But that may temper his temperament tonight, having the mic not being on, and that may be an advantage. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Thank you, Governor.
Thanks, guys.
Governor Gavin Newsom there talking to the media, previewing tonight's debate, talking about the candidates when they square off, what it will be like. You could go back to 2020 to get an idea of what tonight will be like. Different rules, as we've talked about. Back in 2020, during the first presidential debate, the then president, President Trump, interrupted the then Vice President Joe Biden over 100 times. As you heard from the governor, as you've heard throughout leading up to tonight's debate, the microphones will be muted. And so they hope that that's going to cut down on interruptions. An issue discussed back in 2020, likely to come up again this evening, is the issue of abortion. Back in 2020, in that debate, following former President Trump's appointment of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, here's how the topic played out before the striking down of Roe v. Wade.
The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is already
You don't know it's
begun.
on the ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
why is it
you
on the
said
ballot? It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the court.
I don't think so.
In the court. Well,
there's nothing happening there.
Donald, would you
and
just
you don't
be quiet
know
for a
her view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
don't
don't
know her view.
Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just
agree.
want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
Mr. President, can you let him finish, sir?
The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
Are you going to pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know
He doesn't want
you're a
to answer the
senator.
question.
I'm not going to answer the question
Why
because
wouldn't you answer that
because
question?
the question
You want to
is
put a lot of new Supreme Court justices, radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
This
Who's
is
on your
so
list?
Gentlemen, I think
this
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the court.
We have
not going to give a list.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
From September of 2020, the two candidates then talking about abortion, an issue that could come up tonight. We're asking all of you, what issue do you want them to talk about? Melinda in Carlsbad, you're supporting a third-party candidate, is that right?
Yes, I am.
And who? Which candidate?
I am actually very excited about RFK Jr., regardless if he is included in this debate. I believe he's talking about what is really important to the United States people.
So are you going to be watching his reaction and response to the two candidates on X?
I will be doing both simultaneously. However, what really concerns me all about this debate was, and this is with the primaries as well, it's censorship. I would love either candidate that is on the stage tonight to speak about censorship, but you know, why would we not include a third candidate that has submitted appropriate amount of signatures, but the states would not certify them? I just, you know, I think average Americans are feeling more disenfranchised every day. And I care about chronic illness. I'm particularly concerned about the 5 states, starting with Kansas, that are suing Pfizer. I've seen a lot of businesses go under, people losing their houses during COVID. And I was very Democratic, pro-Biden at that time. I was like really believing in, oh, this is what's saving us. And I feel very duped. And then watching how the primaries have went down, Florida just said Biden's only one in a primary. Why would I want to support the Democratic Party, who has had my total loyalty? I've worked for them, and I'm extremely disappointed.
All right.
So, yeah, I like the ideas, and thank you for giving me a voice. I appreciate C-SPAN.
Absolutely, Melinda. Adrian, Lakeland, Florida, supporting President Biden.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Adrian. What issues do you want the two to debate tonight?
Well, first of all, let me say I've been watching President or ex-President Trump since the 1980s. And all he has ever done was rip off people, bankrupt companies, and lie. The slogan for him should be, the truth is I always lie. That's all he does. For this country to go and support an insurrectionist and the people in Congress who support him, the 118th Congress has got nothing done. Nothing, because of these inadequate people that have been elected to serve him over our Constitution. When everybody takes an oath, this is including the Supreme Court, whoever takes the oath, they are not merely words on a page. They mean something.
All right. Adrian's thoughts there in Florida. Several of you have already mentioned the issue of immigration, likely to come up again tonight, border security, etc. Immigration and border security brought up in 2020 during the two debates as well. This is what the two candidates were saying on it at the second and final debate of 2020 in Nashville.
Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero-tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500 children. So how will these families ever be reunited?
Children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through merit.
But how will you reunite these kids with their families,
Let me just tell you,
Mr. President?
they built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, and it was a picture of these horrible cages, and they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them, and then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you have a plan to reunite the kids?
Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
These 500-plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation. Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 of sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you about
I will say this. They went down. We brought reporters, everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some of them haven't been reunited
But just ask one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask them that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President. The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration. It also presided over record deportations as well as family detentions at the border before changing course. So why should voters trust you with an immigration overhaul now?
Because it made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right. Within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people. And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are being sent home by this guy, and they want to do that, is they've gone to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River, and it's illegal. And you say, oh, no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them.
Kristen, he had 8 years to do what he said he was going to do. And I've changed without having a specific. We got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing. It just shows that he has no understanding of immigration or the laws. Catch and release is a disaster. A murderer would come in, a rapist would come in, a very bad person would come in. We would take their name. We have to release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out to find them. We would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe. They never come back. Only the really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay. The two candidates back in 2020 in the second and final debate of that election cycle. We are just less than 15 minutes away from this year's first presidential debate, hosted by CNN, simulcasted here on the C-SPAN network. So you're looking at a live picture of the spin room where the supporters for the candidates will go and talk to the media following the debate. Here at our studios at C-SPAN, joining us is Peter Luge. He is at the George Washington University's School of Media and Public Affairs. He's their chair there to talk about the history of debates. Thank you for being here.
Thanks very much for the invitation.
The very first televised presidential debate was in 1960, as our viewers know, between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. How did that debate change campaigns?
Well, debating became part of the norm, right? It became part of the television era where campaigns came to us in our living rooms. We didn't have to go to a hall or a field to watch a debate or see the candidates. They came to our house. And since then, it's been part of the tradition of American politics that every couple of years, we're joined in our living room by candidates for president, Senate, the House, mayor, whatever, and they make their best case for themselves.
There was no audience then. There's no audience tonight. How does that impact the outcome of this debate?
I'm not sure it impacts the outcome of the debate. It might impact how the debaters respond, right? I mean, comparing 1960 to 2024 is a bit of a stretch, right? There's no audience, but a lot else has changed as well. I think you have to look at the candidates. Donald Trump feeds off a crowd. He likes a big audience. He likes the feedback. President Biden is better in a smaller setting. He's better in one-on-one. That's how he spent his career. I think a lack of a formal audience will probably help President Biden because it's a venue he's used to. And I'm not sure that it's one that will benefit Trump because, again, he likes the energy and he feeds off the energy. That just won't be there.
Another difference will be the microphones are going to be muted when one candidate has the floor. We saw that the former president back in 2020 in the first debate interrupted then Vice President Joe Biden over 100 times. After the first debate, his poll numbers went down. Then the sitting president, his poll numbers went down. How do you think the muted microphones play out tonight?
I think it definitely, again, hopefully brings a bit of control to the debate. It's a little bit less chaotic, a little more of a conversation, hopefully. A lot has been made about the fact that the mics will be turned off when their time is up, although one can imagine if President Trump speaks loudly enough, President Biden's mic will probably pick it up as well. Hopefully, again, it would lead to a more informed conversation that can help voters make up their mind rather than what amounts to a pudding fight on the playground.
The muted microphones is one change for this CNN presidential debate. The Commission on Presidential Debates has been the organization up until now over many decades who has been the ones that have sponsored and organized these debates. How is tonight different without the Commission doing the debates?
Some of the rules are different, obviously, otherwise the candidates would have gone to the commission. I think it's more important that we're having debates than who's controlling the debates. And we'll see this, right? If this works, then maybe, and obviously there's a scheduled debate in September on ABC. If this works, maybe this is what will happen next time. I think what's really important, though, is a reinforcement of democratic norms. Right? We've seen an attack on democratic norms, an attack on democratic institutions, the courts, Congress, the press, universities, things close to your and my heart. The fact that we're actually having debates, though, says, you know what, part of politics is normal and normalized. The organizer matters less than the fact that they're happening.
Another interesting tidbit about tonight is that you have one candidate who's running for re-election, and then you have the other who's attempting a non-consecutive run. Talk about the history of that.
Well, it's happened once successfully, back when, you know, mutton chops were a big deal. So again, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to repeat that. We do have two basically incumbents running on their records and against their opponents' records, which is a new wrinkle.
So you said there was one successful president, Grover Cleveland, right?
Yep.
Had a non-consecutive run. Won first term in 1884, defeated in 1888 by Benjamin Harrison, ran again and won in 1892. So if you want to be successful at this, what do you have to do? I mean, does the former president approach this differently because he's attempting a non-consecutive bid for the White House?
I think the way we know it works is to do it in 1892. I'm not sure what we can learn from 2024 from that, except they're both going to run on their records. These are both known commodities. The American people know President Biden from his time as president, vice president, U.S. senator. People know Donald Trump from his reality television show, from his time in the tabloid headlines in New York, then obviously as president of the United States and everything that's happened in between. We're not learning much new about these guys. We're going to watch to see how they comport themselves. I think mostly the people who are watching are pundits, partisans, and the press, most of whom are going to say, see, I told you so, that other guy's out of touch and incoherent and dangerous, and only my guy can save the republic. I expect that's what we're going to see, and you know, we'll see how much that actually matters in the long run.
The campaigns agreed to this debate in part because they both said voters are using mail-in ballots and early voting in record numbers. So they wanted to hold this debate now, in June, not in September, after the conventions. In this new schedule of meeting the voters, do you expect that there's going to be a large audience tonight at home?
There might be numbers for viewing numbers for debates that are going up in recent years, with the exception of 2020, but people are tuning in. A lot of the people, though, who are tuning in are partisans. And yes, early voting matters. Nobody's voting for president yet because these guys aren't actually the nominees yet. That doesn't happen until the conventions. I think the one in September will be more on track for early voting. One of the things we know from political science research is that debates may move some polling sometimes, but they don't tend to move very many votes. And if one guy does really well or really poorly tonight, the polling numbers may shift, but then they'll settle back to their normal place or where they were. Then again, we've got the conventions. And similarly, you have a bounce. Trump will get a bounce, Biden will get a bounce, it'll settle in. I'm really not sure that tonight's debate does much for the outcome of the election. Neither of these guys is going to win the election tonight. One can imagine tonight making the election trickier for one candidate or the other, but I mean, most of us are thinking about the 4th of July weekend. We're not thinking about the election day in November.
Does age matter tonight?
Well, Donald Trump is certainly going to try to make it matter. He's going to say that his opponent is old and out of touch, and we're not going to probably see the Reagan, you know, I won't make my opponent's youth and inexperience an issue. Certainly Donald Trump and Joe Biden both want to make their opponent the worst caricature of their opponent possible. And part of the caricature of Biden is that he's, you know, old and gumming his Jell-O. And we'll see if that works.
Well, the former president is 78.
Yeah.
President Biden is 81. There's 3 years difference there.
That's true. The people who tend to talk about the age the most are the press, who then say, so, President Biden is really old. What do you think? And voters go, wow, I guess he's really old. I think what matters is mental acuity. And we've seen again and again, Biden, State of the Union address and other events has really shown up in big moments. And I know the Biden campaign is hoping for that tonight, to say, look, he's on top of his game, he's sharp as a tack. He shuffles a bit, he looks old because, you know, 81's old. But mentally, he's there, he's the guy for the job. And Trump is obviously going to try to undermine that. Both campaigns are going to use tonight, pull clips from tonight, pull videos of the worst moment of their opponent possible, and say, see, this is what my opponent's about. And there's going to be a moment where Joe Biden looks old.
So it's not about policy. It sounds a lot like about personality. And are those two issues so intertwined?
The American people, by and large, don't vote on policy. We like to think we do, but none of us carries around a spreadsheet in our head balancing 3 points for abortion and 2 for guns, or like do the math and divide by 4 or something like that. Most of us are Democrats or Republicans, and even independents tend to be really reliably partisans. I think what we're looking for, though, is my guy really up to the task. And you've got Trump has been picking up points lately. One of the Democrats' arguments is there's a bit of Trump amnesia, and so hope of what the Biden campaign wants to do is remind voters, hey, he sounds a little wacky, so those new numbers will then fade back. And again, it's not on the policy, right? If presidents ruled on what Americans wanted as public policy, we'd have a we'd have a wall along the southern border, and we'd have a lot of gun control. We have neither. What we want is somebody who can represent and stand up for our values. This is me. Here's who I want to project myself, my country to be in the White House. And again, both guys, I think, are going to want to tonight demonstrate they're sharp. They're on top of the facts. They're rational. They're reasonable. They can get the task done while simultaneously trying to goad the opponent into being the worst caricature of themselves.
Peter Loge is the chair at the School of Media and Public Affairs at George Washington University. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Many thanks. Always happy to join you.
As we talked about, Peter Loge was talking about their policy, their records will come up tonight, and voters will have a record for both of these candidates. That was an issue back in 2020 as well. Take a look at the two candidates talking about their political records at the first debate in Cleveland. And again, these debates, these previous debates, and the vice presidential debates from all cycles can be found if you go to our website, cspan.org. If you've missed any of them, you can find it there. Again, back in 2020, talking about their political records.
Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent?
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling, and they were saying, it's time maybe, and then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. It was a mess.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused a recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head-to-head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got $3.5 million.
A look back at the 2020 presidential debate, the first one that took place in Cleveland. Now we are just about 2 minutes away from tonight's 2024 presidential debate. We'll try to get in David, who's in California, voting for a third-party candidate. There will only be 2 candidates on the stage tonight. David, what do you want to hear from them?
I want to hear to shut the border and quit letting these people in our country. And because there's no way that these people that's coming into our country illegally and stuff is going to get jobs, be able to pay for their rent, their food, their insurance, their clothes, and everything else to live, except through a socialist system that the government's probably starting up, going for. This isn't right. The border needs to be closed. These people need to be deported because America first.
All right, so immigration is your issue, David, that you want to hear from these candidates. Who are you supporting in November?
Donald Trump.
All right, why?
Because I feel that he's He loves America. He wants America to be number one, and he's for the American people. He's not for the globalists. He's not for the corporations. He's not out there letting people getting money in for himself and his family and stuff to send money out to other countries and stuff.
All right, David. That was David supporting the former president. We're going to hear from you, all of you, again after tonight's debate. And we're now under a minute away from tonight's simulcast of the CNN presidential debate in Atlanta here on the C-SPAN networks. Again, about 90 minutes of debate expected tonight between President Biden and former President Trump. Following the debate, our coverage continues right here. We'll take your phone calls and your reaction on social media. We'll also be live with surrogates from the campaigns inside.